Let me share my screen then. So can you all see my slides?
Sure, good.
Thank you. Okay, wait.
Good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Koo, for having me today. I'm very excited about this time for sharing my research. And I'm especially feeling more honored and humble because, as you can see, Kyung University is my alma mater. So when I first got the invitation to share my research, there was no hesitation at all. And I accepted right away. And it's really nice to see you all, even if it's a Zoom, but still, it's really nice to meet you. Again, I'm Sungwoo Choi, Assistant Professor, School of Hotel and Tourism Management at the Chinese University of Hong Kong and Business School. So the topic that I'm going to share today is the rise of service robots and its unintended consequences. And before I start, please excuse my voice, and I have a little problem with the throat this day, so I may keep coughing time to time, so please excuse me. So let's get started. So again, my research area focuses on the service robots, which could be defined as like a system-based autonomous and adaptable interfaces that interact and communicate and deliver services to an organization's customers. And especially, of course, there are many different types of robots like chatbots and etc. But my main area, my main focus of interest is definitely the physically embodied robots, like the robots that are actually moving around and providing services to the customers. I guess some of you are, I guess the audiences are the graduate students, so I guess some of you are already working on this topic and who maybe have some interest in working on this topic. So I hope you guys enjoy today's my sharing. So why am I really into this topic, and why am I keep developing this topic is, I think you already may know, even if you're not really working on this topic of service robots, but we all know that it's really growing market. So if you look at the this data, which is published by the World Robotics Report this year, the robots has been showing very steadily growing pace. So like back in 2017 or 18, when I just first started working on this topic, when I say, hey, what about the service robots? How would consumer respond to these service robots? And then most of the audiences, their faces were like, what are you talking about? This is about like a sci-fi movie. And then why are you really interested in this very imaginative agent? But since COVID, and I think all of you know that, they actually up and running and they start to serve people. So if you look at this data in 2021, the number of units sold globally, especially just looking at the hospitality service robot itself, is already reaching to the 10,000. And in 2020, the number goes almost double, more than double actually, right? So 24,000. And with this given very steadily increasing pace, the organization expects that in 2026, so in 3 to 4 years, it will go around like 120,000 units sold globally. So it's actually growing. And according to this report, the South Korea is one of the top biggest markets in the service robot in hospitality field. So, I mean, if you think about the Incheon Airport, international airport, there are lots of robots moving around serving people. And more increasing number of restaurants are also start to deploy these robots serving customers. And so given this kind of trend, there's been a growing number of research working on this area, service robots. And what has been done mainly in the hospitality and tourism literature and also in the service literature, you can see that the majority of the topics centers on how consumers perceive the robots, and even more before that, what are the key factors that make people to adopt the service robots? What are the factors that make people to more willing to use the robots? And what's the attitudes? What's their attitude toward these robots based on, for example, like their appearance, their behavior, their actions, how they communicate. So these were the main the areas of the interests of the previous research, and also on top of that, how people perceive the service quality provided by the robots, and how would this perception, how this evaluation could be carried over to their overall evaluation toward the hotel or the restaurants. And yes, of course, I was also one of them. So I also have some work on this kind of topic. But as you can see, these previous research, their main research focus is really heavily rely on the robot-centered outcomes, like the attitude toward the robot itself, or the service quality evaluation based on how the robots deliver the services. So how do we evaluate the robots, and how do we develop, how do we evaluate the hotels or the restaurants? And then I start to realize that, well, it's really difficult for me. I'm not smart enough to find a very niche research area from this robot-centered outcome-related literature. So I start to find that what are some of the new, more innovative approach to find my way to get, my research can be more spotlighted and get published on the journals. So I kind of switching a little, shift my gear toward a little different way, which I'm going to present is unintended consequences as a result of interacting with service robots, and as a result of being more exposed to the service robots working around in the field of hospitality and tourism industry. So about the unintended consequences, what I'm currently working on and focuses on are indulgence and prosocial behavior. So indulgence, meaning that as a result, after interacting with the robots, it's unintentionally leading people to engage in more indulgent choice, like choosing more unhealthy food options, for example. And also, a rise of the robots could make people to engage in more prosocial behaviors, like being more kind to other people. So that's the two big projects that I'm currently working on. And this indulgence project is, I was fortunate to get the R&R invitation from the APR currently, so, and also tourism research, so I'm working on the revision now. And the prosocial behavior one is now is a very exploratory stage. So I just started this idea. So basically these two projects are not really published yet. So therefore, I really want to share this with you all today and get some very constructive feedback, some comments, some critics, so that I can better develop the whole idea as a manuscript in the end.
Okay, I wish I can.
Oh yes, please, please. So when we talk about the rise of the robots and the robotic service encounters, and what are the drivers, what are the main drivers and factors that leads to these unintended consequences, I think I would like to start with the starting point, the initial difference between interpersonal versus robotic service encounters. So the interpersonal service encounters, of course, mainly served by people, maybe entirely by human service agents, versus robotic service encounters. Now those robots, they replace those frontline human agents and start to deliver the services directly to their customers. So what's the biggest difference, these two? If you think about this interpersonal versus robotic service encounters, what do you see as the biggest difference?
Emotion, response.
Emotion and trust. Emotion, could you elaborate a little bit more about what kind of emotion could be different?
Okay, like yeah, left image figure is a people interpersonal. So we beyond the functional, service Q&A, we can be able to touch the emotion with a face to face,
Okay.
and smile at each other and increasing my level of emotion positively, something like
Okay.
that. But right side, the robot, in the middle of robot there is the functional, just delivery service, rather than uh, the robot itself. The right side, the humanoid, is uh, in the middle of the human and the robot. Uh, it it doesn't sound like intelligently, but anyway, act like the human beings.
Yeah.
So we feel more attitude toward human-like. So that's my thinking about
Okay.
robot right now. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Koo. Any other answer from the audience, students? What do you feel? Oh, there's a chat.
Oh, I
Service
think
recovery. Okay.
cost is different, maybe.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Cost?
Post?
비용이요.
A cost could be
네.
different. Okay. Any other thoughts?
For the scope of service they can provide.
Scope of service. So maybe the human service agents could deliver more variety of services.
Yeah, and they can deal with like many situations, but like robots are basically like coded, so the programmers should expect ahead so that they can program it. So I think it makes a difference.
So maybe there's a different levels of flexibility in terms of how they deal with the different situations. Good. I think those are the good answers. And I think Professor Koo actually made a great point. Like if you look at the previous studies on how consumers respond to the service robots, how they deliver the services, actually the main perceptions that kicks a role in consumers, their perception is that there is lack of human touch. There is no emotionality, there is lack of sociality, which is traditionally very well communicated by the human service providers. But in the robotics service encounters, they lack any kind of human touch. So we usually describe this hospitality industry as high touch industry, right? It's all about the humanity. But in the other hand, the robotic service encounters, we say it's high tech but low touch. So basically, we think that there is lack of humanity in the robotic service encounters. And at the same time, the growing number of research has shown that as this pace of the growth of service robots, and as people see more robots playing around and replacing human beings, we start to feel some kind of a threat by looking at these service robots doing their own job without intervention of the human service agents. So these two perceptions, the lack of human touch and threats, I think I will propose that these two are the main perceptions the driver that leads to the the indulgence and the prosocial behavior respectively. So let me go into a little deeper on each of them from now on. Excuse me. So the first one is a indulgence project. So as we as we just talked about, and as Professor Koo mentioned, according to the service encounter needs theory, which was initially proposed by this Bradley et al. 2010, we, as a customers, we have a fundamental need for pleasant social interactions with service providers. So when you enter the lobby of the hotel or when you enter a restaurant, you might have expectation, certain expectation to be greeted by the human beings, say hello with a big smile, warm smile with the warm gestures, right? So that's our fundamental need. We all want those kind of warm social interactions with the service providers. Of course, it could depend on some different contexts, but mainly that really shapes our fundamental need of social interactions. But however, when it comes to robotic service encounters, technically there is no, or maybe not no human agents, but at least there is a reduced number of human employees who work there. So that means there could be reduced interpersonal connections, right? Interactions between the customers and the human employees. So, and therefore, it could be perceived as, again, lack of interpersonal warmth. So we see that there is no warmth in these service encounters. Some people even describe it as like a cold encounter because there is lack of human touch and humanity. And this kind of things could also prompt some feelings of being unwelcome, right? And even goes to like feeling ignored. Not, of course, not really feeling ignored by a individual service agent, but it could be somewhat described as like, oh, I'm treated poorly by the company, by the restaurant, their manager. They kind of ignore all the customers by putting the service robots and replacing the human elements with these machines. And you can start to feel like we are kind of ignored and treated poorly, and which could generate feelings of service exclusion. Okay. So that's the starting assumption of this study.
Dr. Choi, I have one question
Yes, please.
before we go the next slide. Like a social interaction and interpersonal connection, interpersonal warmth and feelings, and service exclusion. At this moment, they're pretty much obvious comparing human service and robotic service.
Yes.
But like when we are all understanding at this situation the emergence of ChatGPT and the AI conversation is much rapidly increasing human-like conversation and acting like a human with a machine-like robot. So probably beyond the obvious interaction or reaction, I want to see more very the curiosity, the slight difference how people behave differently with the real human-like conversation and machine, or human-like conversation with humanoid, or just the voice robot like a Siri, Alexa, something like that. That's the also robot with the voice. There is so I think at this stage we further into the deep, the robotic research beyond the obvious, comparison or the generous, framework. That's
Right,
what I'm
Professor.
feeling at this
Yeah.
moment about robotic service. Yeah.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. I think you made a really good point regarding the technological advance in terms of the robotics and in terms of the capability of how they could communicate with the customers. So it is changing. So actually, I'm going to present that kind of a part
Okay.
2 slides after. 2 slides after. So that's okay. So let me talk about that as well. Okay.
Sure.
But that's truly good point. So that's why I also included that part in this project as well. So thank you very much for pointing that out. So, okay, so let me move on to the next part. So again, I said in the robotics service encounters, mainly people feel like there is lack of warmth, which could drive our feeling of exclusion, feeling excluded, ignored, unwelcome. And this feeling of exclusion has been found to cause emotional distress. Some negative emotions such as loneliness, need for belonging, or sadness, and even goes to anxiety. And it's not just about emotional outcome, but it also has some cognitive outcome, which is a cognitive disorientation. Like it limits our rational thoughts once you start to feel like you're feeling excluded. And previous research, a big line of literature already have found that once you have this negative feeling or emotions, the mood, you will probably tend to indulge in order to repair this negative mood. I think some of you or many of you here have this kind of experience, right? Like during the exam periods, you may have some negative feeling throughout the week and you don't really care about what you eat. You just try to eat something very, indulgent so that you just try to make a instant good feeling to get out of this very bad mood. So that's about the emotion regulation mechanism behind indulgence once you feel the negative mood. And again, at the same time, when you're feeling excluded, your cognitive capability could be somewhat limited. And once you cannot really limit your rational thoughts, which means you cannot really control yourself completely, as much as you could do on the, when you're feeling okay. Okay, so that means you just simply cannot really cognitively thinking what you're eating and what you order, so you're also more likely to indulge because you do not really cognitively fight against these indulgent options. So overall, the robotic service encounters may drive people to feeling they're excluded, and which will in turn increasing the likelihood of you to choose indulgent options as following this the emotion regulation mechanism and cognitive disorientation. And as Professor Kuhn just mentioned, I was wondering if this robotic service encounters will always lead to the indulgent behavior, because nowadays the robots they have made a huge improvement in terms of their capability, especially in terms of their communication skills, following this ChatGPT and all this open AI based artificial intelligence. So if you know about the service robot literature, the literature also generally categorizes the robots into non-humanoid and humanoid. So when the robots have more human-like features in terms of their appearance, but also in terms of their communication style, in terms of their actions, behaviors, when they have more such features, we call them humanoid robots. But when they don't have such human-like features, we just call them as a non-humanoid robots. And what's important in terms of these two types of robots is that we treat them differently, even though they are the same service robots. But once they have more human-like features, like the humanoid robots, we can really easily anthropomorphize these robots than when it is a non-humanoid robots. If you study the robots, service robots, you might find this term familiar, the anthropomorphism. But for those who are not really familiar with this term, the anthropomorphism is the cognitive process that people attribute humans' characteristics or traits to the non-human agents. So in this case, the robots. So just very simply speaking, the anthropomorphism is to see non-human agents as human beings. So again, when the robots have more human-like features, just like a humanoid, talk like a humans, and showing more emotional and social capability, we can more easily anthropomorphize these robots and treat it as a human beings than the non-human robots. And as a result of this anthropomorphism of the robots, previous research have found that people start to believe that they have agency, meaning that these robots have their own intention, they can think, they can have their own motivation behind their behaviors, and also even further, they have some capability of feeling emotions, even though we do not think this is realistic, but still, we have this kind of a perception. If you think about, like, imagine that you're watching a video at the very human-like robots, and someone punched on his face, then we kind of think like, oh, that robot must feel some painful, right? But if you see that kind of a same scene, a person punch on the non-humanoid body, then we're less likely to have such a thinking. So that's about the anthropomorphism.
I have a question
yes,
about
please.
that keyword, anthropomorphism. How
Yes.
about I'm discussing a conversation with the ChatGPT, and I ask the ChatGPT, including a certain specific place, and I want ChatGPT making my itinerary trip planning. And then suddenly the ChatGPT ignored my request and do not include my request. So I insisted, put it in the itinerary. And again, I asked ChatGPT, call me Oppa, and then the ChatGPT, okay, I can't, and I insisted. Is above anthropomorphism, isn't it? Is it? We can say that's just simply anthropomorphism aspect, or is more than that?
Well, anthropomorphism should be understood from the observer's perspectives. So it is you, Professor Koo, whether you actually anthropomorphize this ChatGPT or not. So it is not really objective thing. So some people are more easily anthropomorphize this ChatGPT, but on the other side, some other people, even if this ChatGPT can really communicate like a person, but they will just simply treat it as just AI. It's not human at all, even if they really talk like a human. So it's on continuum, and each individuals have different tendency in terms of anthropomorphism as well. So if Professor Koo, you felt when you were communicating with the ChatGPT, you felt like you are talking to a person, then you anthropomorphized that ChatGPT. But if you didn't feel that way, then you didn't anthropomorphize that ChatGPT. But yes, but once they have more human-like features to begin with, then I want to say we could more easily anthropomorphize these robots rather than when they do not have such human-like features.
Okay.
Yes.
So is anthropomorphism is including the emotion and the conversation and the featuring or the physical aspect together.
Yes, sex. So no matter what the factor is, as long as it makes you feel like this agent is a human-like, then you can anthropomorphize it.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. So going back, so as a result of anthropomorphism, you start to feel like this robot has some agency, having thoughts and capable of feeling, which are the very key elements, the components in terms of social connectedness. So therefore, previous social robots research literature has shown that people really believe that these humanoid service robots can somewhat and somehow satisfy your individual needs for social connectedness. And they found to be very effective in social robots. But of course, there are some mixed finding in terms of service literature, whether this humanoid is really good or not. But in general, in just very big, broad service social robots context, humanoid robots has shown some positive impact in terms of satisfying people's social needs. So therefore, based on that, I put up these two main hypotheses that consumers are more likely to indulge in robotic versus interpersonal service encounters. However, if you look into more detail, this effect could be diminished when consumers interact with a humanoid versus non-humanoid, because this humanoid can somewhat already satisfy your needs of social connectedness. So therefore, you may less likely to feeling of excluded compared to when you're interacting with the non-humanoid. So H2 is about the mediation. So all this impact of type of service encounters on indulge could be mediated by the situational need to belong. So here I operationalize this service exclusion as a situational need to belong, because these two concepts are conceptually very highly related to each other. So in order to test this hypothesis, first I conducted a simple experiment. So I collected 233 samples from Prolific, targeting the US consumers. And the design was a single factor. So there were three different agents, humanoid versus non-humanoid and human. And I used a scenario-based experiment. So I asked people to imagine that they are at a local restaurant and they happen to be served by a humanoid, a pepper, or a non-humanoid, a Pudabot, or a human service agent. And I gave a very brief descriptions about how they greet you and how they took your order and then how they deliver the food. And after you finish the main dish, they approach your table, and then the robot or the human agent recommend a dessert, which is their signature chocolate cake. So after that, the main DB was the likelihood of ordering this recommended dessert on the single 7-point scale item. And also, after that, I measured the situational need to belong on 10 items. Here's an example. And before giving them this scenario, I also measured the hunger level, how hungry they are at that moment, and their diet status, whether they are on a diet to lose their weight, and some of their demographics before giving the scenario. So here are the results. So I ran a one-way ANOVA to test the hypothesis, and I found significant main effects of the agent types on indulgence. So, and also the significant main effects on need to belong as well. So if you look at the graph, the results show that when the customers they interacted with the non-humanoid, they show the highest likelihood of ordering dessert compared to when it's a humanoid, and also when it is compared to the human. And the same patterns happened for the need to belong as well. So people express the strongest need to belong when they interacted with a non-humanoid compared to the humanoid, and also compared to the human. And what's somewhat interesting finding here is that I kind of assumed and predicted that there is also significant difference between humanoid and human, because humanoid, even if it it is a human-like robot, but I thought there must be difference between the human and the humanoid robots. But interestingly, the results show that there is no significant difference between these two. Of course, there is directionally it supports our hypothesis, but it's kind of, I thought it's quite interesting, like showing no significant difference between humanoid and human. And further,
it's interesting result you got on the projection. As your result is oppositely from my guess. I guess it's a human is higher than the humanoid, and the humanoid higher than the non-humanoid. But the order is exactly oppositely outcomes from my expectation. Why?
Oh, may I ask why did you thought why did you think the reverse opposite way?
The likelihood of ordering dessert. Okay, I want to place an order to human service service waiter and waitress rather than humanoid, rather than non-humanoid. That means I imply that okay, the robot and people who have a curiosity toward the robot and humanoid, probably they place an order interestingly or for fun.
Oh.
Probably this stage you are investigate on people still remain robot, humanoid, and machine like is a kind of fun kind of tools rather than actual service, actual stuff. But to me, okay, I don't want to get involved in the process between food and my life as machine interfere my stuff. That means probably still about a robot is people feel like a implant, okay, or something like okay, if the people humanoid or machine or the good enough to smart, just like human behavior, then we place the non-humanoid or machine-like. But my expectation and my speculation at this moment about the humanoid or machine-like is in the middle of the high service or low services. Some people think that is a low service level is a curiosity, and high service is a lack of expectation. That's my argument point.
Yes, I think that's a very interesting view in terms of this likelihood of ordering dessert. And I actually haven't really thought about that kind of issue when I designed these experiments. Like, like I just simply do not want to make any order from toward these robots. I think that's quite interesting. But I think here, the way that I designed this experiment, and in this scenario, we already kind of mentioned that, you already made an order through these robots. So you have kind of already have known that these robots can take your order and deliver the food to you. So it's already assumed through this scenario. So maybe that concern could be somewhat assuaged by this scenario design. But I think what you mentioned is something like maybe technology readiness in somewhat like individual difference could be there, like how we see the advancement of the robots and how we feel comfortable or familiar with the robots. Right. So maybe that individual difference could also kick in terms of how we respond to the robots as well. So maybe that could override all these facts. So you just simply, even if you feel like socially excluded, but you still just simply do not want to make any order from the robots because you're not really ready for this technology, right?
Right.
So I think that's a really good point, Professor Ko. I think that's one of the way that I could also look into the individual difference in terms of how they respond.
Yes. For the question, people who are enjoying pretty much ChatGPT this year, and then they trust level will be changed to the positive way about a robot. Okay, because enough, very enough intelligent level. I feel confidence. But before, the people who are not using ChatGPT or Google Bard, probably they still robot is just is incomplete service comparing the human intervention. So before we are ChatGPT, we are measuring that kind of the readiness or self-efficacy or innovativeness level or competence level. But I want my students to check up, okay, how much you using the ChatGPT or Google Bard. If you use a lot ChatGPT or Google Bard in your task, then probably you feel confident about a service robot. Then will be different about this kind of humanoid, human, non-humanoid.
Yeah, that's
this
true.
is a paradigm shift this year, before this year, after this year.
Right. That's very true. So I think it will be very interesting to see that whether this their usage, consumers' usage or frequency of the usage of this ChatGPT could be a proxy for the technology readiness, for example, or their attitude toward this advanced technologies. I think that'll be a very interesting measurement, I think. Thank you very much for your idea, Professor Ko. I wrote it down. So moving on, since if you remember the H1, actually the main the comparison that I also made is the robotic versus interpersonal service. So I run another study, not a run of study, but another analysis. So combining those non-humanoid and humanoid into one condition, which is a robotics versus human. So in this case, since the sample size is quite unbalanced, so I switched to the Welch's t-test and then found the consistent results. So people were more likely to order the dessert when it is a robotic service encounter versus human, and also showing the higher need to belong versus interpersonal encounter. So these results could give support on the H1. And to test H2, I ran the mediation analysis using the process model and based on the bootstrapping samples size of the 10,000. And since my hypothesis and my interest is comparing, first of all, the robotic service encounter versus interpersonal encounter, and also non-humanoid versus humanoid, I decided to choose the Helmholtz coding for my independent variable. So if you look at this, the numbers, the pair 1 is about the human versus robotic, so non-humanoid plus humanoid conditions, and pair 2 is just simply comparing non-humanoid versus humanoid. So all in all, the results support our hypothesis showing that the situational need to belong could at least partially explain the effect of type of service encounters on the likelihood of ordering dessert. So in the robotic service encounters and when it is a non-humanoid, people feel a little more stronger situational need to belong, which could ultimately affect our likelihood of ordering dessert. So this also gives us support for
need to belong.
I'm sorry?
In this scenario, why you think is importantly the variable need to belong in this scenario?
Oh, well, because that's my theoretical argument behind the effect of service encounter type on indulgence. And as I explained earlier, this robotic service encounters may induce some feelings of exclusion, which could be also operationalized in the need to belong. And this exclusion of feeling could affect our indulgence, right? So therefore, I put this need to belong as the one of the underlying mechanisms behind the agent type. Yes, thank you. So after that, I wanted to test these effects in the field again. And I was fortunate to have to purchase a robot, the Temi, which you can see on the left-hand side. And we already have this humanoid robot at our campus. So we decided to run a quick field study to see the real behavior. So we invited around 120 participants from the campus. So mostly they were students and some campus staffs. And then we conducted this study at our main campus, the cafeteria. And it was a single factor. This time we didn't have the human because we wanted to have the very identical ordering system to rule out any noise. But just see if whether this robot type effect is there in indulgence. And so we conducted this study throughout the 4 weekdays during the afternoon tea session, like between 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. in order not to disturb their operation. So on the first 2 days, we used the humanoid robots, and the Wednesday and Thursday, we used the non-humanoid robots. And we invited them and asked them, oh, this cafeteria is going to launch the new ordering system by the robots, and please test this new ordering system and see how it flows. So they were just invited, and then they just being asked to order a drink. And we gave them 2 different options. One is a oolong tea. Another one was a soft drink. So this soft drink was the proxy for the indulgent choice. So our main dependent variable was the choice share in different conditions. So this is a quick results. So as we predicted, people were more likely to order the soft drinks, the Coke or Sprite, when they have a quick interaction and then they order their drink by the non-humanoid versus humanoid robots. So this could also give us partial evidence of supporting H1 as well.
Interesting.
Thank you. And in study 3, even if I didn't really give you all the hypothesis development behind this, but this was the main purpose of study 3 was the test of mechanism, the mediation through moderation. So the main idea behind this kind of test is that you just want to test the robustness of your mechanism. So in this case, the need to belong. So if you have read some marketing and CB literature, this is kind of a trendy thing that when you want to test robustness of your mechanism. So basically, what we try to do is adding a moderating variable that could switch on and off this mechanism. And so what we expect to see is when this moderator can keep this, in this case, this need to belong, this perception salient, then the expected agent type effects on indulgence will remain same. But if this moderator kind of switch it off, like by having this need to belong less salient, then this agent type effect will be somewhat mitigated. So that's the main idea behind this study. So here I collected around 500 samples from Prolific again, and design was 3x2, agent type, humanoid, non-humanoid, and human. And I used a group composition. So whether they visited this restaurant alone or with their group of people, because this group composition is found to be one of the strongest factors that shapes our need to belong in the restaurant context. So I used the same scenario, but with a very minor change at the beginning. I asked them to imagine, depending on their condition, they visit this restaurant alone or with a group of 4. And then the rest of the scenario was the same. Like I showed the same type of robots and the human service agent. And I also asked them to imagine this agent ask you for having a dessert after the main dish, and the main dependent variable was likelihood of ordering recommended dessert. So this is the results of this study. So basically, I found a marginally significant interaction between the agent type and the group composition. But if you look at this pattern, especially for the solo consumption, which is the condition where the need to belong is much salient than group composition. So in that case, our predicted agent type effects on indulgence was still there. So showing that people were showing the strongest likelihood of ordering dessert in the non-humanoid condition versus humanoid and human condition. But when it comes to the group composition, the group dining, so their need to belong was already somewhat satisfied by visiting this restaurant with their friends, then this agent type effect was mitigated. And then there was no difference in terms of likelihood of ordering dessert. So this is kind of showing another evidence that need to belong is actually one of the key mechanisms of the effect of agent type on indulgence. So far, this is about my indulgence study, and let me wrap this up again after another quick introduction of another part of my research, which is the pro-social behavior. And again, this one, I just started idea development, and so I don't have clear hypothesis at this moment. I just have a research question and some directions, and I have collected some pilot data. So that's everything that I want to share with you guys. But please share some comments, okay?
Professor Choi, can I ask a question before we move on to the thread?
Oh yes, please.
Yeah, so I was thinking like, how do we sure about like each choices of indulgent choice you made? Like, how do we prove that it's their indulgent choice? I mean, like from researchers' point of view, like it's clearly indulgence like choice, indulgent choice, like soft drink over like oolong tea, but maybe like it can be like personal choices. And then like, do we have any like I don't know, manipulation check or like any like checking before like we do the analysis?
Oh yes, sure. So for this one, I ran a quick pre-test on, oops. Let me see. So can you see this slide?
Yeah.
So I conducted another quick kind of a pre-study before running this because I had to make sure whether this oolong tea can be perceived as a healthy option versus soft drinks is perceived as a non-healthy option. So I ran a quick pre-test with the same pool of samples. So I also asked our student and staff about how perceive the healthiness of these two different types of drinks. And then results show that based on this within subject ANOVA, there is a difference. So people perceive this soft drink as an unhealthy versus oolong tea as a healthy drinks. So therefore, the choosing the soft drink could be the sign of the indulgent choice. Did that answer to your question?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any other question about this indulgence study from the audience? In terms of a design or any concern? If not, then let me just move on, but you can still ask me. Oh, yes, please. Oh, I'll just go ahead. And then maybe you can ask me questions after I finish all the presentation as well. And if you are too shy to talk out loud, then you can just use the chat function to ask me through text. Then I'll just read it out. Okay, so the next part is the prosocial behavior. And as I quickly mentioned earlier, the robotic service encounters may also induce some feelings of threat. It's because I have this kind of assumption because previous research has shown that as a human beings, we tend to see, it's very nature for us to see the humankind as an in-group versus the robots. So who are the non-humans, of course. Robots could be grouped into the out-group members. And previous social psychology literature always say that the out-groups are threatening group because they kind of threatening our existence, for example, or they are the potential enemies that will take our economic resources, etc. So we feel like those out-groups as a threatening group. And then now we all start to see these robots as our out-group members. And as getting these robots getting more smarter and getting more intelligent and as having more capacity in terms of their communication skills, as Professor Ku mentioned, we have much stronger fear of being replaced. I think if you recall the all the news articles after the ChatGPT was released in the world, the majority of the news articles were talking about the job, or job loss, job replacements, which could induce the stronger fear of being replacement, which is the threat, definitely, to our humankind. And at the same time, at the individual level, these robots can also create some feeling of uncanniness, creepiness, and also that goes to the human identity threat as well. So in here, maybe, of course, the just instant interaction, this very quick interaction with the robot may not really prompt this feeling of threat, but as time goes by and as time we see more advanced technologies coming out like ChatGPT and see they start to replace human beings' jobs, then this kind of threats will really play a role in our life. So then how come this feeling of threat could result in pro-social behavior, which is the main focus of this study? Because there is some evidence behind that. So when you feel threats, we usually activate these defensive coping mechanisms to alleviate this negative feeling. Again, like anxiety or uncertainty or the loss of control. So especially when it comes to the threats, which is a collective, like terrorism or unemployment. So it's not an individual threat, but our whole in-group members are getting threatened. Then people try to reaffirm with their social group to restore the sense of control. They want to feel more comfortable and feeling like they are in control under these very negative circumstances. So a recent study has shown that as the robots getting more prevalent in our workforces, it actually shows that it can reduce the prejudice, so negative stereotype toward the outgroups. In here, the outgroups, what they tested was like different nationality, different ethnicity, or different religious background. So people reduce this prejudice toward these outgroup members when they start to see the rise of service robots in our workforces. So, and at the same time, the mortality salience, which is also the existential threat, could be potentially triggered by the robots and has been found to be triggered by the robots, can also produce pro-social behavior. That's what the previous studies have found. So all in all, again, in this study, I propose that as the robots, as they start to replace more human beings, getting smarter and playing more roles in our workforces, we will probably feel more threatened, but it will unintentionally make us to be more pro-social than before. So since I don't have like concrete hypothesis at this moment, so I just having one research question. So will consumers be more engaged in pro-social behaviors given the rise of robots in the field? So I just basically tried to collect some data to see if this direction is correct or not. And those are the things that I want to quickly share with you. So here, first, the evidence that I have is archival evidence from the US. So I had this data about the percentage change in the robots in the workforce within the US metropolitan area from 2010 to 2015. Unfortunately, this is the most recent updated data, so there's no further than 2015. And also, I collected the total amount of charitable contributions claimed for tax deduction at each of the US metropolitan area. So finally, I have 1,522 sample sizes of the data, and we run the panel data analysis, which is of course mainly conducted by my co-author. I have no expertise in this one, so my co-author mainly helped me on this. So we run 2 steps of regression. So first step was pooled OLS regression model to test the just baseline model. And then in model 2, since this is panel data, and to address this characteristics of panel data, we use the fixed effects model to better capture that. So in this data set, we have different variables. Again, our main independent variable was the percentage change in robots within this metro area. And the main dependent variable was the amount of charitable contributions claimed for the tax deduction divided by the adjusted gross income, which is the typical methods used in economic papers. And also following those economic literature, we also control for the GDP per capita and median household income and the total number of tax returns and total number of returns with charitable contributions. So quickly running this study, we found that, yes, there is a positive relationship between the change in the percentage change in the robots in the workforce and the donation in that certain US metropolitan area. So meaning that the more people see, the more individuals see the robots getting into the workforce in our daily life, they actually show some pro-social behavior, which was in this case we operationalized into the donation. So that was some archival evidence and correlational evidence actually. So after seeing these results, I quickly ran another pilot study with experimental design to get more stronger causality. So we collected 100 samples from Prolific, and we designed a single factor. So one is interpersonal service, another one is robotic services. So we invited customer participants and we show them a 1-minute video, the 3D animation describing hypothetical restaurants either run by the robots or by the humans. And asking them to visualize themselves, very vividly visualize themselves visiting this restaurant and experience their dining, and then describe how would you feel while dining at this restaurant and how would you behave, what would you order, something like that. And after that, reading this task, we give them another different hypothetical scenarios. Like, so imagine that after you finish your meal on your way back home, there were this kind of different scenarios. And how likely are you to help these strangers? So there are 6 different scenarios, like giving money to a homeless person, donating money to a fund, offering a ride to a stranger, giving directions to a lost stranger, and allowing strangers to use your phone, and giving food to a homeless person. Yeah, so these are the screenshots that we use for the stimuli. So we created this 3D animation. It's 1 minute long. Keep describing how these robots work or human service employees work in a restaurant. And after they fully watch the whole video, again, we ask them to visualize yourself in this restaurant and please describe how you feel. And as a result, we found that, yeah, surprisingly, after people watch these robotic service encounters, they said they are more likely to help. They have shown the highly likelihood of helping the others compared to the interpersonal service encounters situation. So which also provided a support of evidence, empirical evidence saying that yes, maybe the rise of the robots, and once people see that these robots are taking our jobs at the restaurants, could unintentionally lead people to be more pro-social at the end. So that was two evidences of this pro-social behavior project. So to quickly wrap up, I believe these two projects have some contributions in the theory by examining this influence of the rise of robots on unexpected customer behaviors like indulgence and prosocial behavior. Again, because most of the previous research have talking about how we evaluate the robots, how we evaluate their service qualities and the hotels, but it's relatively unexplored area that how would consumer behave after being exposed to or interacting with the service robots. And also we try to demonstrate how this unpleasant psychological states like need to belong or maybe a threat could induce some robots, could drive this unintended consumers behaviors. So those are the main theoretical contributions that I could make from this projects. And then what are some practical implications? So what's the message takeaways from the manager is that if you are a manager and if you try to deploy more robots, then you could expect some unique unintended, even if you did not intend to do so, but consumers may show different behavioral pattern. So you can make some, promotion or the offering arrangements based on the type of service encounter. So for example, like you can pairing up some healthy options with a humanoid or humans, then rather than using the non-humanoid in that case. But if you are trying to promote your indulgent options, then you can better pair it up with non-humanoids than the humanoid or the human, because that will be more effective by increasing the chance of getting a trial. And also, again, the managers can encourage their customers' pro-social behavior as they adopt more robots at their front lines. Because maybe it could be partially because people feel somewhat threatened by that, and that could ultimately lead to the pro-social behavior. And that's my assumption at this point. And I hope I could get some robust findings and get some the full findings and then make a manuscript. So that's pretty much everything that I prepared for today, and I hope you all enjoy this sharing. And again, I really look forward to your comments and questions.
Okay, back to the last slide. I have many questions, and like Professor Choi, he introduction when he introduced his slide, and he said this is a big industry, and we are changing the paradigm from human service to the robot service with ChatGPT means AI service together. So I think as our student here, master degree and PhD degree, it's not matter of technology study and research, but the area we are attempting to publish, and then industry overall changing to this way.
Yeah,
so
true.
I strongly recommend you investigate like Professor Choi. I don't know robots, I don't know ChatGPT, I don't know technology. It's not a the issue. It's not the excuse. I want you to find like a new 1995 when the internet era comes to our life, and then and then changing, and then 2007 the apps and with the smartphone, it's overall changing to new world. Now it's a robot and ChatGPT and the conversational AI.
Right,
something like
right.
that. You said comparison humanoid and human. It's a very initial stage comparing that kind of comparison. I think it's a robot and ChatGPT is getting more and more sophisticated, just like a human, like emotion, the indulgence, and then like a hallucination, like a trust or threat sort of things. It's all different kinds of issues we are coping with. Like you know, me actually when I'm traveling around, I don't still asking much ChatGPT or Google Bard, but I searching myself TripAdvisor and Google search and sort of things, which means it's more exact information I can get, and I don't want something missing information or misinformation. The I don't still believe totally the ChatGPT or Google Bard, but I get idea or overall general idea using of that conversation AI. So I think these days is how we are going to integrate those conversation AI and robot and human intervention together, and probably try to configure the each different stage with those three entities: human
Right.
intervention, robot or humanoid robot, machine-like robot, and adding to the ChatGPT or Google Bard together. It's a
Right.
totally it's a new era, and then you are facing.
Right, right. That's very true. And we're really changing a lot. We're seeing those changes, right, in many different countries. And then, as I mentioned, Korea is like a frontier in that area, I believe. So
Right.
more and more companies are doing that. And yeah, I think now we're at the very tipping moment that the new kind of service delivery is really happening. And we never know how it's going to shape at the end, but we are now seeing those differences and now we're testing out. So I think it's very has a huge potential from the researcher's perspective, like seeing many different, thinking about many different scenarios, different situations, and see how consumers respond differently in different situations. So yes.
Professor Choi, in order to making good journal paper, we definitely we have to understand the phenomenon and reality, but we have to bring some framework, theoretical framework from the previous research. What is your advice for our students? How can you get the formulate your research framework and the idea with a reality and phenomenon?
Well, to me, what I just personally do is just reading lots of previous social psychology literature. And so as I was introduced by Professor Koo, what I'm really fascinated about is reading those social psychology literatures, finding very interesting theories and some phenomena and concepts, and see whether this very old, even if very old, whether this could be somehow applied in explaining how we, interact with this very new advanced technologies like robots or ChatGPT. Because previously we've been just interacting with the humans. So there was nothing really new insights from there, right? Because it actually happened from like a hundred ago. But now, since we are now start to having interactions with the non-human agents, so therefore having using this kind of theoretical lens from the old, not necessarily old, but something have never been used in explaining how we behave. But if you think about try to use these concepts or theory into the current phenomenon, explaining, why people respond to the robots like that, why people respond to the ChatGPT like that, and if that's social psychology concepts or theory can explain it, then I think that has a huge contribution. And I think that's what most of the top journals are looking at this moment.
Thank you.
So yeah, so my tip is just read those papers first,
Yes.
instead of reading the contemporary paper. I think that will also give you guys much more idea and what kind of theories or lenses that you want to use. Yes.
Questions? Kang Hyo-jung, what's your question?
Any questions? Do I have some questions from the chat? No.
Yeah. This is a very great opportunity to, talk with Professor Choi and train your brain, warm your mouth.
Professor Choi, I have one question.
Yep.
Do you think like the impact on the people's pro-social behavior can be get the impact from the context of the, like, I don't know, donations? For example, like the donation itself can be directly related to like people's job loss. I mean, human job loss because of the technology, and something irrelevant like saving like people in Africa or something. And if you compare that, like we can see the context impact of the such phenomenon. Do you think it can be related to?
I think that's a very great point because, as I mentioned in the presentation, so this threat is mainly driven by the threat to our economic resources, and it's about in-group as a humankind versus out-group of the robots, right? So I also think that if you ask me, I would say donation context might matter a lot. So for example, if, as I mentioned, maybe if the donation is really helping those who in need, especially those who lost their job, then I think it's going to be the strongest. But if it's a little irrelevant, then maybe weaker. And it also, you can think like, if the donation is something toward like animals, right? Those are also outgroup of the people. Then maybe also there will be somewhat weaker effects on the prosocial behavior. So yes, I think that's a very interesting point. And maybe I can also work on that kind of area, see how different contexts of donation could result in different patterns. Thank you very much.
And I was thinking another one is like the previous experiment you said that the results can be driven by like watchdog effect, like you're actually being seen by some subjects, so you're try to like act more in certain way, but like when you're just interacting with like is something that don't have any faces or like actual human-like interaction, like the results can be different. So I was thinking like that can be really good topic to do the experiments too. And because like I'm really interested in this kind of topic, like I had a lot of like ideas, like scattered ideas. So like another thing was like you said like in-group, out-group, and that can cause the threats, right? And I was thinking maybe like in time, like when people get get used to the service robots, and like the people actually like being used to that kind of service can be the in-group too. And then like people who are losing job or like are not used to that kind of service can be out-group too. So in that case, the threat can be replaced by like PT or empathy or something, so that like that can cause another prosocial behaviors. So how do you think about this idea?
Yeah, I think that's also a very interesting point. Like when the day comes, like in the end, like people, just like as Professor Ko mentioned, like when the smartphones first introduced in the world, like people kind of what the heck is that? But now we all using it, right? It's like our second identity. Then what if the robots become like that? Like is, you know, more people now using their robot cleaner, the vacuum cleaner at their home. So we are now getting used to these kind of robots, and they are doing their job. And so maybe since this is kind of just early stage, so people feeling threatened by the robots, but maybe at the end, maybe people start to feel like, well, I don't really feel like I'm threatened by this robots anymore. So maybe this pro-social behavior tendency could be diminished about. And that could also be determined by the individual difference as well, like the way they see how their job is feeling threatened or not. So there are some papers out there already, like in applied psychology and American psychologists. They are saying like so they usually compare the people with using more AI in their job versus not much of using those AI. So it's not necessarily the robot, but AI perspective. But they also show some similar kind of the results and the outcomes, like people feeling threatened about their job security, so which could also affect their organizational behavior in their company, something like that. So you can also take a look at those kind of papers. I think they will really be helpful.
Okay,
You know,
thank
people
you.
these days look into the only job opportunity and threaten sort of things or replacement by robot and ChatGPT civil service. But however, these days I am doing this kind of research. Okay, a lot of the product are attached with the brand explanation and the product explanation. When we are selling a car or renting a car, the conversation AI is explain the specification and the very very detailed information. And people, when we receiving or when we look at those kind of advertisement or explanation with AI, or we clarify this is information provided by AI. What do you think? Probably people are more tend to believe AI, explanation service. Some people are not. Or sometimes people are experience goods like a hotel business. Hotel product is experience business. In that case, would be different from the commodity product when we apply for AI explanation or AI, the effect. So there's huge number of the scope with AI and robot service together. So please think widely and scope, expansion rather than only replacement or comparison non-humanoid, humanoid, or something like that. We go further beyond that stage.
Right. I agree. I really agree with your point, Professor Karen. And it's not just about the service robots, and then there are so much of an application of AI in many different processes in many different jobs, and you don't really necessarily think about these will just entirely replace all the humans, right? I think what's more, those top journals also, the editors are looking at is, okay, so don't just simply compare between human versus robots, okay? Because it's entirely replaced by the robots with like zero human intervention is somewhat unrealistic. So therefore, what those top journals and their editors are requesting through the review process is like, how can these robots or AI can collaborate with human, and what will be the results of that? What is the case if they are very well mixed, balanced? Then how will people will respond? So they also are looking into this kind of picture, very more realistic picture than just simply human versus robots in two different groups. So yeah, so I think you have to also think about many different possibilities, like when the robots is the executing all the tasks while the humans just input all the orders. versus like the AI give all the inputs of the data and the human just execute all the things. This is also like the very interesting comparison, even if the same collaboration, but looking at the who gives the input of the sources and who just execute those more repetitive or mechanical things. How would consumers respond to that kind of services or the products? That's also another kind of a very interesting part that I'm thinking.
Any other questions from students? Oh,
Are they mixed of a master student and PhD students, or
together? Yeah.
Together, okay.
Together.
Well, if you are master students and if you are interested in studying in Hong Kong, I would encourage you guys to submit the
Right.
apply. And if you are interested in robotics or AI study especially, then please find me. I'm very happy to work with.
Hong Kong is providing very good research support.
Yes, very tremendous supports. So
Okay.
you'll really enjoy a lot. I think especially when it comes to robot study, I think it's much better. We have much better environments than the US.
Yes,
I
right.
will say. So because our neighborhood is called the Science Park, which is just like a Pangyo in Korea. So we have a lot of like startup companies developing the service robots, and they are very willing to provide their robots and collaborate with their researchers. So it will be very interesting.
So tuition free and housing support and living expenditure together, right? Depends on the qualification of this the applicants. I know that.
Yeah. It depends. But I think the housing would be a little problem, as you all know about Hong Kong. But yeah, tuition will be it's not a problem. But I think the housing and but yeah, if you are interested in it, I will really encourage you guys to apply. Yeah.
I'm encouraging you to go abroad. Good.
Yeah.
Why not? Challenging. Yes, it's good. Okay. Any other questions? Oh my God. This is a typical trait of Korean. Not much question, not much talk.
I fully understand.
We are doing well, silently.
Yeah. Hong Kong is the same. So I always ask them, just use your chat if you don't want to speak out. So, but here I think
Hong Kong, Chinese they talked a lot, and Japanese are silent. Korea in the middle. Russia, they are too much talk.
Okay.
American, they are too much talk.
Yeah.
And Israeli, they are also much talk.
I think we have a great mix of background as well. Not just Korean students. We also have I could see some names like Chinese name and.
Yes. This is a good thing due to the Korean pop culture and the cultural background, cultural phenomenon. Many different countries, we are much more becoming diversity. People from the more wide country. I mean, different country.
Yep.
And so, which is a very good for our, the cultural experience.
True.
We have the problem in the faculty, we are very much a lack of the faculty who can speak English very well and who are willing to teach in English. That's our problem. So Professor Choi has come to Gyeonggi University.
Thank you.
There's a verbal invitation in advance.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, if we don't have, we can finish a little bit earlier than the schedule.
Yeah, and also it's a Friday, so.
Okay, good. We have TGIF Friday. today
Yep.
we should drink soju and the weekend.
Yep.
Okay, look forward to see you, Professor Choi. Thank you very much. I want you to last concluding remark to our students, and I'm finished.
Okay.
I want you to speaking out the last you're addressing or advice.
Well, like I mentioned, just open to many different. Just try to be open to many different topics as much as possible, especially at your time of studying master's and PhD. And also try to learn from the past, learn from those very well established literature and see how this could explain the most contemporary happening things. It will really give you the widening and broadening your perspective. And you will also see how interesting that those old theory can also be applied and explain what's happening in the very today's world. So I think that will be a good thing. And I just received some questions. May I address that?
Please, please.
Okay. Okay, so.
Wow.
Okay. So the marketing major students, now working on sustainable consumption, intention gap. Okay. And the finding of the research could be one solution to push sustainable consumption since it shows raw human pair. Brand fit or matchup effect, yes. Whether your research could be developed further into robot type service industry fit to search which industry service have highest potential to get consumer sustainable consumption, whether okay. Okay, so I guess this student asked me about the fits and which of the industry, so at which of the industry we can expect the strongest like a pro-social behavior as a result of the rise of the robot, I guess. So based on my theorization, in that case, I think that will be the case where the industry has the most highest potential of being replaced by the robots. Those like somewhat repetitive tasks are major of the tasks, and most of the human employees has been already replaced. So that will be some potentially highly affected by this. So it's not just whether it is like in service industry or the just general like a mechanical industry, but it's more of a whether it more depends on whether the industry is like a vulnerable in terms of job insecurity because of the rise of robots, and they are taking more roles. I think it's more of the issue in here. If you talk about the fits, does it answer to your question?
Very good question. I think the fit theory is important because some tasks, some industry, some service doesn't fit very well the robot service or AI service. So investigate on the fit between A part, B part is tremendously important, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, Professor Choi, thank you very much today, and I look forward to see you, and I hope you work with me, Journal of Smart Tourism.
Of course. Thank you very much for your invitation, and thank you very much all for having me today. I really enjoyed sharing, and if you have more questions, just feel free to send me email. It's also fine. So I also look forward to seeing you all in Korea one day or in different countries during the conferences. So I also really look forward to see you again, Professor Koo. All right, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Thank you.